Pastor Phil, and I welcome you to Third Rail Ministries. Every day at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, we spend a little time considering the Word of God as we journey on this planet in the time that we have been given. And in this Advent season, we're getting together and using a device called the Jesse Tree. And tonight, the bulb that we're going to have is entitled Ruth, because we're going to be studying about Ruth. And this Advent season, we're using this thing where we're each putting key words written on a bulb. We'll get done decorating the tree at the end of the Advent season, but it takes us through the Old Testament as we see God working his way toward the Christ child. So today, our scripture is from the book of Ruth. And so we're going to take a look at it and what role it plays in the ministry of God's mission, and how he works through the prophets, how he works through stories like Ruth, how he works through events like Noah and the ark, everything aiming toward the Christ child, the arrival of the Christ child. Now, we're not going to read the whole book of Ruth, although I would recommend it because it's an easy read and it's probably good for you. There's a lot of good little details in there, and it's a good drama. But I'm just going to provide a summary. And so I've written a few notes here to make sure that I get all that in there. First of all, Naomi and her husband Elimelech, and her two sons have to leave Israel because there's another famine. And they travel over to the neighboring country of Moab, which is a little different geography, a little better health, a little better food product. And so they're able to make it. So they go over there, and as the sons grow up, they marry a couple Moabite women, one by the name of Orpah, the other by the name of Ruth. As luck would have it, or as fate would have it, Elimelech dies, and then later on, her two sons die. So Naomi is left there with two daughters-in-law, no sons, no husband, and she decides that she wants to go back to her hometown of Bethlehem, back in Israel. So the two girls leave, and they go there. Orpah travels, and Ruth travels, and she tries to send them back. She says, go back, make a life for yourself, be with your people, take your gods, go back to your people. Just go back to your home base, because the Lord has dealt tough with me, and I'm in misery, and you don't need to be part of that. So eventually Orpah says, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And she turns around and goes back to Moab. Ruth, on the other hand, refuses to go, and she finally pleads with Naomi not to ask her to go. And she says that very famous scriptural line, where you go, I will go, to Naomi, and where you stay, I will stay. And your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, there I will be buried. And so Naomi looks at Ruth, and she sees the commitment level that's there, and she sees the promise that she's put in there. And she says, okay, come along. It's your life. So a long story short, they get back to the town, and they need to find grain, and Naomi's an older woman. They need to find something to eat. So Ruth goes and works the fields. And what you do in the fields is the people who harvest the field go through, but there's always by law a little left over for the poor. And so that is the grain that Naomi is going through the field and gathering to herself, so that she and Naomi will have something to eat. So Boaz is the next entrant into the story, and he owns the field. And he asks about Ruth, and he says, who is she? And then they tell her who she is, and so he instructs his harvesters to leave a little extra for her. And so once we see the act of Boaz being kind to Ruth, who in turn is kind to Naomi, and life begins to take a little bit of a turn. Long story short, boy meets girl. Girl wants to falls in love with girl. Boy falls in love with girl, and they all get together, and they get married, and they have a child. Now is where the story gets good and interesting for us tonight. According to Matthew chapter 1, and the last sentence of the book of Ruth, we now find out the significance of who Ruth is. Ruth is the great-grandmother of King David. Boaz and she have a son named Obed. Obed becomes the father of Jesse, for whom the tree is named, and out of Jesse comes David. And it's out of David's lineage that eventually the Son of God, Jesus Christ, the Messiah to the people of Israel and to the rest of the world will be born. So, that's why I picked, this story right here. It's a great story to begin with. I really like it. And but I want to draw a couple of things for you as far as Advent goes. What has earned Ruth the place that this story has in the scriptures? Well, one, it's a tremendous story of faith and commitment. Back in the day, if you abandoned everything to go with somebody else, that was huge. Because let's take a look at what Ruth abandons here right now. She abandons her family, her biological family. She abandons her culture, which is different than the Israelite culture, although she has a taste of it because she married an Israelite man and she had her mother-in-law. Her history now has to be Naomi. And literally the price for her love for Naomi cost Ruth, if you will, everything. And sometimes that's what love costs. Sometimes to pursue love and to pursue dedication, pursue commitment, in this case for Naomi, cost her everything. But she was willing to give up everything to stick together and to be with her mother-in-law. But we learn a lesson of what it takes sometimes when we follow God. Because God, too, demands everything. We know from the scriptures in the New Testament that Jesus tells them that you're going to have to be separated from your family. If you follow me, you're going to be separated from the things that mean a lot from you. Sometimes following God and ultimately following Jesus can cost you a lot, can mean that you'll have to sacrifice a lot. So that's one thing, and that attracted the people who included it into our canon, and it attracted the people who made it part of the scriptures that Jesus taught from and held in high esteem. It's interesting to note in verse 14 that the women who grieved with Naomi when she first came back from Moab, when she returned without her husband and returned without her sons and had nothing in the Jewish culture, because without a husband and other male people to take care of you and stuff like that, you're almost bereft. But yet we turn around and these same women are celebrating with her on the birth of a grandson, and they choose to call this grandson, isn't it great that the Lord has chosen to provide you with a guardian redeemer? That's the name they attribute to Obed. And what we now know, you and I know, is that she couldn't have known then that the ultimate guardian redeemer would come from her family. So there's a couple things there that come out of Ruth, just I thought I'd point out for you. It's a grand story, and it teaches us some great lessons. One, God can work through any obstacle. Man, you would think, and sometimes when we're looking at our lives right now, and some of us have gone through more than others, and life is getting a little strained right now, but God can work through any obstacle. Ruth going with Naomi because of all of the loss, and just going back to a country that she was just going to be with her mother-in-law and grieve with her and everything else like that. How would Ruth know that that choice would lead to the great King David, whose lineage would lead to the ultimate King, Jesus? And that leads us to the last point that I want to comment on tonight, and that's perspective. Perspective is everything in the Christian faith. We tend to get a little narrow-focused in our Christian life, our day-to-day walk, because we're dealing with the immediate, and the immediate to us seems so important. We think we're really great planners if we manage to get our calendars out a week and feel organized, and we go to bed at night, we're relaxed, and we're so happy and everything else like that, because our week has been planned. And then we're frustrated and angry, and some of us have anxiety, and because our life isn't going as we hoped and planned, or as we feel secure in our hoping and in our planning. And that's where the lesson of perspective comes. I would say that probably the biggest problem in the Christian church today is just that perspective. Our eyes are on the ground or on the immediate, and not where God would have us our eyes be. God didn't say life is going to be easy. God didn't promise an easy life through his son Jesus Christ. In fact, often it gets difficult. When Jesus came as an infant, the world took a turn. Two things happened. One, God set his plan of redemption in motion, the final pieces in place. And two, evil was going to become more clearly defined than ever before. Perspective is everything. To be able to stand in the trials and the tribulations and the unevenness and the unfulfillment, to be able to stand in the blessings, to be able to stand in the unbelievable joy, to be able to stand in all of that and not have our perspective fixed on the here and now is truly a goal to strive for. Ruth didn't have the perspective. We have Ruth's perspective because we're looking back, but Ruth couldn't have known that God would bless her like that. I wonder when we read the story of Mary, when she talks about how she pondered on the things that happened in her life, if she was working on her perspective. All I know is that the story of Ruth teaches us great things, and that's perspective. And when we get to the story of the Christ child and in the story of Jesus, the Pharisees thought they had him beat when they had him crucified, but they weren't looking at the eternal dimension. And most people would think that a plan was over when the centerpiece of the plan was done, but that's not what happened. In fact, when they nailed him to the cross, they completed the final act of the redemption plan. As you go and you read Ruth, and I would really encourage you, it's a half hour, 45-minute read. You read through it. Just enjoy the story. But remember that perspective is everything, because what appears isn't necessarily what is. And remember that your God is in charge. Have a great day.